Welcome to chapter 3. In this chapter we are going to take a look at the literature, so magazines and books I have about the C64 and VIC20 or Commodore in as such. And the first book I want to point out is Commodore, a company on the edge. This is not an old book, this is actually a book from, let me see, it's from 2010 and it's by Brian Bagnall, and this is a very thought after book, and I got it for I guess €2, and it's in my opinion one of the best coverage of the Commodore story. So if you are looking for a good book about the Commodore company, this is a very, very good book. Won't go into details here, but it shows the company from inside out, and very nice book. So next up we have a German classic, and this was called an electronic magazine, Input 64 or Input 64 as we call it in Germany. And this came in these cardboard boxes. You could get one every month. Cost 14.80 or 12.80 initially. They raised the price to 14.80 later, Deutschmarks. And the special thing about this was it came with both a magazine in print form and a cassette tape, which contained the programs from the magazine, and yeah, so you had a pretty inexpensive way to get new software every month. And I guess back in the day I did buy this pretty much every month. So some of the more popular programs are, for example, the dataset tuning program, I can't quite recall the name right now, which I used in the PET video. This did originate from Input 64, so they hired people or paid people and kids and teenagers for their programs and put these on these tapes. So you get games, you get applications, as you would call them today, and here we even have a Lisp interpreter. Yeah, was quite nice. And it says you get 140 kilobytes software without typing. And on the back side you can see what you get in this magazine. Yeah, that is Input 64. I guess they never made it anywhere else than Germany and maybe Austria and Switzerland, because you have Austrian shillings and Swiss francs as a price right here. It's all euro by now, by the way, but no, Swiss francs still exist. But back in the day, that was my kind of stuff I got. Then there was a magazine that was 64er or 64er in English. And this is a special edition magazine. I guess back in the day it cost 6 marks, Deutschmarks. This is a special edition which cost 14, which had more listings and stuff. And when I started on my C64 without a dataset and without a floppy drive, typing in programs was pretty much the way to go. So I sat there and typed in these columns and columns and columns and lines of numbers and basic programs like these, and you have a checksum at the end, but I never went through the hassle and typed in the program that actually did the checksum. So I was error fighting quite a lot back in the days. Yeah, this is VIC20, which was a German publication from Markt&Technik, which actually still exists to the day. And it was also sold in Austria, Switzerland, I guess it's Lithuania, and Danish krones in Denmark. So this seemed to have made it across the border, actually. I have another one of these, which is called 64 Starthilfe, which means help to start. And this was, I guess, an introduction to the C64. So you got a disc with this, which I don't have. And you got a few things which told you what to do. They also had these discs which you could buy with graphics programs and tools and stuff like that. So back in the day, this was the real shit, so to say. And everyone with a C64 was reading VIC20. At least everyone I knew. Yeah, so that's VIC20. They also did books, because Markt&Technik, the publisher, was really a book publisher, and they did those magazines. And this is games for the C64, so you had a whole bunch of games you could type in. And you had text games and graphics games. And I quite vividly remember that Biorhythm was a thing back in the days. Dragon Slayer, okay. 127, let me see. I doubt that this is the real Dragon Slayer. It would be a little short. Oh, and it's already with 3 pages. But yeah. So many listings to type in. And yeah, that was my source of games. Then we have a whole stack, let me take this out, of Data Becker or Data Becker books. Data Becker, Mr. Becker in the 80s was one of the big luxury car dealers in Germany. And he was in Düsseldorf. And when computers came up, he decided to found a publisher, and that was Data Becker, and they did software and books and all kinds of stuff, and they were quite popular, I guess. Together with Markt&Technik, Data Becker was the main publisher of books, and I worked for Data Becker. I did books for Data Becker myself, so I know a little bit about the internals of this. And yeah, again, they went through the magazines and came to the copy parties and stuff and looked for people who were able to do a book or a program. And they published programs for the C64, the Atari ST, Amiga, like demo makers and font editors and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, here are a few of these Data Becker books. This is the best tips and tricks for the C64. And this is from 98. No, 89. So we have stuff for the dataset, we have stuff for the floppy, we have basic stuff, software protection, graphics, we have sound, we have games like game pokes, which were very popular back in the day to get more lives, stuff like that. Yeah, so these books were quite popular with the kids. and they usually cost around 20 to 30 euros, Deutschmarks back in the day, as you can see. Yeah, pretty cheaply printed, nothing special, but quite a variety. I guess there were hundreds of those books out there. Then we have the robot book for the C64, which was the first data backer book I ever bought. And this came out in '85, so it was pretty early in the C64 lifetime. And what caught me was this picture. I was always interested in hardware projects and stuff like that. Didn't have any ability whatsoever. And I thought, if I buy this book for, there's not even a price on it, interestingly. I guess it was 40 Deutschmarks. If I buy this book, I will be able to build this robot. And I was a huge Star Wars fan, still am. And no, I didn't build a robot, to my own surprise, which was not too surprising actually. Because to get anything of this, you needed at least a basic understanding of electronics, which I did not have. And this is the kind of projects you would do with a Raspberry Pi or an Arduino in these days. But back in the day, the C64 was the Raspberry Pi and the Arduino. And I didn't even grasp the idea of that. So for me, the C64 was a creativity tool and a gaming machine. I wasn't the greatest gamer, but I was big into game trading. And I thought this would open my door to the hardware part of things. But it didn't, quite surprisingly. Next up is the school book for the C64. And I see in videos quite often that in America the Apple II was very popular, in the UK the BBC Micro was quite popular, and in Germany actually we had C64s and PETs in schools. And this is the school book for the C64, which is also by Data Becker, and they weren't a school book publisher back in the days. And you have things like math, physics, chemistry, languages, biology, topic, business or economy, and all that stuff. And it's actually made quite nicely. I guess this was done by a teacher. And you get basic programs to type in and get a little more grasp on why you should learn stuff in specific topics. And there's also the disc for the book, which I don't have, but I have the manual which comes with the disc. And as was so often, you also have error corrections which came in these publications. So yeah, that is that. And then maybe one of the more popular books for the C64 from Data Becker was Peaks and Pokes for the C64, which did give you just that, peaks and pokes, and you could type them in and do fancy stuff like change the border color, make stuff blinking without having to know machine language. And I quite liked this. I guess I had this book exactly. You could draw lines and stuff like that. Stuff that you couldn't do with plain basic commands. And that's where this book came in. Again, no price, and I guess this was also pretty early in the run. It's 85, yeah. It's a book from 85. If you're interested in any of these books, I can scan them in. I guess they are all already available. We can go into more depth of any book you see here. Just let me know in the comments. Then we have a book that I got in a bundle, and it came from Hofacker, which is also a German publisher back in the days, which I didn't know and didn't have any relations to. This is from '84, actually. And it's called Hardware Extensions for the C64. And it's called Commodore instead of Commodore or Commodore, which, as you might know, is not correct. Even in Germany we call it as a Commodore or Commodore and not the Commodore. Just saw this right now. Yeah, it's correct on the side, but it's wrong on the top. Oh, maybe this is worth anything. I don't know. Okay, so this is actually quite interesting because it does hardware projects. So this might come up on the channel in the future because there are some projects which might be interesting, like connecting to a relay or connecting to lightning diodes, light detector, acoustic stuff, digital analog converters, EEPROM burning, connecting a TRS model 8100 to the C64 with Blitz text, which I guess is a program they sell. So that has sneaked in here. And yeah, they did more books and had these fancy covers. Never got to read any of their books back in the days. Then we have a Commodore-owned book. This is actually from Commodore. And it's all about the Commodore 64 programming book or handbook. And I guess this is the programmer's guide for the C64 in the US. And it's the German version. So here's a quick reference. And we have these colored sections, graphics programming. Let's take a quick look at this. So we have basic programming, basic vocabulary, graphics programming, music programming, machine language, input output, and appendixes. Is it appendix or appendices? I don't know. I guess appendix is some part of your organs. However, I think this is a programming C64 programming manual, but I don't quite know. Maybe by browsing through this book, anyone can tell me if this is a German translation of this. Doesn't have any information what it is based on or when it was printed. No, 84. So this seems to be just that, and it seems to be a multi-part series because this is Band 1 or Book 1. And I got this in a bundle too. Never had these books back in the day. If I had these books, I would have been much smarter and much more proficient in programming on the C64. Never got beyond basic on the C64, by the way. So I always was always stuck on basic, and I was totally fascinated by people who could do machine language and assembler and stuff like that. That brings us to the last one of my books here on the stack, and that is Simon's Basic. I don't know if this is a thing in America or UK or anywhere else, but Simon's Basic was a cartridge which you could plug into your C64, and it would give you more than 100 extra basic commands, especially graphics and sound commands. So for me, this was like heaven. As a kid, I went on a 3-week holiday with guys, and one of the organizers brought his C64, and he had this Simon's Basic module, and he did have some programming skills with this. And so he did a mastermind game. And as you can see, I guess I'm missing a few pages here because it starts with 2.16. But this gives you graphics commands for drawing lines, circles, writing text, stuff like that. And if I recall correctly, Simon was actually a guy of 17 or 18 years who did program this extension, and Commodore did buy this from him. So quite impressive for a 17 or 18 or 16-year-old guy, don't quite recall it. And this guy was actually called Simon. This is why it's called Simon's Basic. And I loved this back in the day. Still love it because it gives C64 more of these functions we have on a C16 or C+4 or C116, which actually has quite some nice basic graphics commands. And I really was into basic and graphics programming back in the day. Especially graphics programming was totally my thing. Sprites and lines and stuff like that. Always was a visual type. Yeah, that concludes this chapter of the first part. My C64 books and stuff. A little excerpt from the stuff I have. So this is a nice representation of the things we had back in the day. I did leave out the games magazines because this could be another chapter, but I guess it's more interesting to look at the main players in the game, and these are them. Good. So I see you in the next chapter. Until then, bye bye. This is Retro is your new black. If you are new to the channel, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and until next time.